everyone. Welcome to July 2021 Becky's Anonymous live stream. My name is Lee. I'm so excited to be here with you all again. And today we're going to be talking about housing and building community wealth for all. Housing has been a topic that's come up in most of our live streams, has come up a lot in our growth circles. So excited to go even deeper in our growth circle on Wednesday to dive deeper. I know a lot of you are really excited to hear from our guest. Unfortunately, our guest is unable to join us tonight, but we still have a lot of information on his organization, so we'll be sharing that. We'll be sharing a lot of the actions that you all can plug into if you're interested right now, particularly around issues like the current eviction crises that are happening across our country. And then we'll also share a little video to end our time and hopefully get us motivated, get our thought juices flowing as well as our spiritual juices flowing to think about how we can be a part of creating new systems that build community wealth for all of us instead of some of us. And so I want to start with our opening quote. And this is from an article that we'll be sharing with people. The article is called Housing is a Social Good. It's by Gianpaolo Bauchi and H. Jacob Carlson. And as I said, we'll be sharing that article with the Growth Circle emails that you'll be getting. You can also Google it if you would like to, but this is a quote to just open our time together. Houses anchor people to particular places, forming the foundation for community, human connection, and solidarity. And so, as I said, unfortunately, Andrés del Castillo is unfortunately not able to join us tonight. He is the co-director of Right to City Boston. But to share the work of Right to the City Boston, it is a multi-issued alliance of grassroots-based building organizations representing low-income, people of color, immigrant communities working together for social justice. Alternatives for Community and Environment, Boston Workers Alliance, Chinese Progressive Association, City Life Vida Urbana, New England United for Justice, and Neighbors United for a Better East Boston have all come together under a platform of values and principles. The right to stable community, the right to economic justice and good jobs, the right to democratic participation, the right to public good, and the right to a healthy environment. Our alliance is committed to supporting and strengthening our members' organizations' individual social justice fights and base building. Their collective work is currently centered on fighting displacement and gentrification in Boston. So we'll be sharing a little bit more about how you, people in Boston, can get more aware of their work. We'll also be talking about national work. People may have that we know are in our network are not from Boston, but as we've had this experience already, you all are so great in plugging into a lot of the similar work that we share here in the live streams in your own community. So we'll of course be hearing more about that, and we'll also be sharing some of those actions in a moment. But I also wanted to, before we got to that, wanted to share some of the other work that Andrés was going to share with us, which is the Right to Remain Coalition. So this coalition is a growing popular movement demanding neighborhood stabilization and our right to remain in Boston. Their citywide coalition of groups and organizations are fighting displacement and gentrification at the neighborhood level, anchored by Right to the City Boston in partnership with Boston Tenant Coalition. Right to Remain is focused on multiple stabilization policy and advocacy strategies that increase tenant rights and protections, demand community control over land development, address wealth building in our communities, and make speculators pay. So we are hopefully, we're in the works of rescheduling with Andrés, so you all will be hearing much more in the future. So look out for that about this amazing work. I'm sure a lot of you hearing about that work wish we could hear more, and we will in the near future. But wanted to make sure that we still put out what's going on, because even though Andres couldn't be here in person, we still want to make sure that our network is hearing about the work, is plugging into what we can. And that brings us to kind of our action steps, which really we're connecting to the questions we were going to go deeper with our guest. We'll be going deeper with these in our growth circle on Wednesday. A lot of you have already signed up for that. So awesome. We're really excited to dive deeper with these questions about thinking first, how does commodification of housing uphold white supremacy? And a lot of us here in Becky's Anonymous have reflected on how we as white women, who are often gentrifiers, inheritors of property, of housing, how are we using that those resources, using that economic power to build investment and community wealth for all, not just to continually participate in this system that just continues to perpetuate white supremacy. And so we were going to hear kind of from Andres his thoughts on that, but we're obviously going to be I wanted to share those questions just to give a little preview of kind of what we'll be discussing on Wednesday. And get kind of really focusing on what are these strategies that we can work on in our local communities. And that brings me to just wanting to shout out some of the actions that I'll share now, and then we'll also share after the video again briefly. You'll also get these actions in emails with us. We'll be putting them on our social media and things like that as well. So wanted to highlight, of course, first, following the Right to the City Coalition on social media. So that's at Our City RTTC. That is a national organization, so you can check out joining them in your local area. And right now, really, there's a strong call to specifically get involved in work that's dealing with evictions. So, of course, each kind of locality is a little different on how these endings of eviction moratoriums are affecting and affecting communities and kind of what can be done, because each kind of housing authority and housing laws can be feel very local. So it's important to kind of figure out who are those grassroots organizations who really have the knowledge about strategy in this moment. But really wanting to shout out to particularly look in your local area about who is organizing around evictions and what is their ask for how you can plug in to support that work. Next action is reading the article, Housing is a Social Good. It is about Boston, but of course applies to many communities, and there can be lessons and things that you can take for your community from that article. Like I said, we'll share that. Signing up for City Life or Vita Urbana action alerts. They have some great ways that you can plug in locally here in Boston around organizing around evictions, but also as well as other issues. That is an organization that has been, if you haven't heard of it, has a very long history in Boston. So they've been doing this organizing for a very long time pre-COVID. So are in a great position to really understand in this moment what are the best ways that we can be strategic and helpful. Signing the pledge, and we'll share this, to fight for housing as a human right. Really, anywhere you are, figure out who is saying this, who is organizing under this slogan, housing is a human right. But like I said, we'll share a specific local petition that people can sign on to, but also, again, wanting to encourage people in their local area getting involved in this movement for housing as a human right. And then the last one we want to share is calling your legislatures about rent control policy. Find out who your legislature is, find out how they feel about rent control, and tell them the reasons why you support rent control. And we'll share resources about kind of how you can articulate that and talk about rent control. So those are 5 actions that we're just sharing with you all. Again, in our communication with you, we'll be sharing these on Wednesday in our growth circle. We'll go over these again. And I'll share them again briefly after our video, which I'm about to share in a moment. So yeah. So we're gonna dive into this video. We wanted to share this video in instead of our guest today. Well, we of course we would have loved to have our guest, but we're using this video. We were gonna use this video just as the closing with our guest, just a part of it. So now we're gonna show you the whole thing. It's about 9 minutes. So we'll share it, and then at the end I'll review actions and again some future events that are happening with Becky's Anonymous, and then we hope to see you all on Wednesday. So this video is called A Message from the Future to the Years of Repair. It's an animated short film that dares to dream of a future in which 2020 is a historic turning point, where the lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic and global uprisings against racism drive us to build back a better society in which no one is sacrificed and everyone is essential. And we share this because, again, here we try to both think about how are we tearing down systems of white supremacy, but more importantly, how are we being a part of building something new? So we hope this video is food for thought, but again, also spiritual motivation for us to really get motivated to be a part of something new. And I'm sure a lot of you have been thinking about a lot of that in this moment of COVID-19. So of course, also wanted to give honor to this moment of COVID-19 and all that we've lost and learned from that moment. So we'll now share this video. Like I said, it's about 9 minutes, and then we'll close out.
Looking back, it's hard to believe that we've rebuilt our community from the ground up with our own hands. The first seeds were planted way back in the terror and tenderness of the pandemic. And then change bloomed in the streets, in the fire and struggle of the uprisings. Around here, we'll never forget the day that the last prisoners were released, walking out into the arms of their loved ones. The easy part was finding work. The Community Care Corps was always looking for people in those days, whether for universal family care, burying border walls, or green new public housing, going up one pod at a time. Yep, it was a good time for busy hands.
Funny, thinking back to the first wave of the pandemic, that's what you really remember. Hands. Washing, scrubbing, disinfecting, washing again, picturing each other's hands, all the hands that had touched whatever we were touching, the hands that packed the box, that picked the tomato, that planted the seed, the hands that stroked the brow, that said goodbye. The hands were us, all of us. That web of hand-to-hand, breath-to-breath relationships was a reminder. We are all entangled, making each other sick, keeping each other alive. That was just one of the lessons of COVID-19. It started in the first great pause, when the smog cleared and the rich fled the cities, when poverty dropped its disguise and racist inequality drew the map of the disease. As the roar of the traffic faded, we arose to birdsong and ambulance sirens. The virus showed us what was truly essential. And we learned again and again that so many of us doing essential work were being treated as sacrificial. From nursing homes to detention facilities, meatpacking plants, and fulfillment centers, the virus exposed the cruelty of these warehouses of efficiency and profit. Then, things got worse. In 2023, super droughts led to mega floods. Locusts carved a path across continents and hyper typhoons drove millions from their homes. COVID-23 raced through storm shelters and refugee camps. Supplies ran out again. Meanwhile, dinosaurs roamed the halls of power, bellowing that more sacrifice was needed. But every time they cranked up that rusty old machine called economic growth, the cloud of sickness and death grew.
and we couldn't breathe. Couldn't breathe from the asthma in our polluted communities, from the smoke of those fires. We couldn't breathe with a knee on our necks, in the clouds of tear gas as we shouted, "Black Lives Matter." And that is how the virus changed everything. We finally understood that we couldn't keep patching up the same broken systems. We had to build something new. What was needed was a spark. That spark was us. After months of organizing, the viral rent strike was like a starting gun. Then came the essential workers strike. Delivery drivers, street cleaners, and farm workers got together and said, "Enough." This time, people didn't just clap from their balconies. We flooded into the streets to join together. One of the leaders was Luciela, a young food courier. When a police bullet stole her life, the crowds exploded in size and then exploded again, spreading across borders like a counter-virus. The sparks look different in every country as the wildfire strikes leapt across borders. Economies ground to a halt, this time blockaded by workers. We lost too many young heroes as states brought out the iron fist, but it was no match for the raised fist of solidarity. Soon, authoritarian rulers started to topple like statues, and new governments were suddenly nervous about ignoring the streets. We joined hands and pushed further, launching the years of repair.
The first step was rebuilding the economy around the core of essential work: food and farming, care for young and old, public health. Not to mention the essential labour of the more than human world, the winged pollinators, the leafy oxygen makers. The Full Employment Act made the new priorities clear, and there was a wave of new worker cooperatives in everything from mental health support to public art and tree planting. Many bosses were made redundant. Our information ecology needed tending too, and so we built a digital commons, vaccinated it against surveillance, and built up our herd immunity to disinformation. Fossil fuels were running on fumes by that point, so we harnessed their final profits to clean up their messes. Whatever we could, we did outdoors. School, theatre, celebrating. At first because it was safer, then because we realised it made us happier. Nobody talked about missing shopping. Anyway, the right to repair movement meant that a lot of stuff got fixed rather than thrown away and replaced. With life moving at a slower pace, we finally had time to look back. And we began the most important repair of all: repairing relationships. In colonial countries like the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, those were hard conversations. But truth and reparations commissions helped some of us face the truth about the violent conquests of the past and how they shaped our world. That guided where we repaired and how. It turned out that once we fully funded schools and housing and healthcare, we didn't need those bloated budgets for policing, prisons, and war. And ultimately, the flow of money on planet Earth had to be reversed. So the North finally started paying its debts, and the South finally stopped.
Around here, the Land Back program began the historic process of returning some of the stolen land to indigenous jurisdiction. In the process, we remembered how taking care of the earth lays the ground for taking care of each other. Within just a few years, we could see the bottom of the river again, and it was safe to drink and fish in its waters. Things aren't perfect, of course. Between mutating viruses and our warming world, there's always new storms headed our way. But when they come, we're ready. With our networks of nurses and neighbors, our small farms and big forests, our systems of care and repair. No one is sacrificed. Everyone is essential.
Awesome. So if you were as inspired by that visioning as I was, let's talk again about those first steps that we can take towards that vision. So again, just want to remind you of the action steps that we had mentioned before the video. So we'll share how you can follow Right to the City Coalition on social media at Our City RTTC. This is a national organization, so even those of you not from Boston or in Boston, please check out where you locally can get connected with them. Read the article, Housing is a Social Good. For people in the Boston area, sign up for City Life Vida Urbana action alerts. We'll also send a petition that is signing up your pledge to fight for housing as a human right. And then we also ask that people call their legislatures, figure out their opinion on rent control, and learn to advocate for rent control with your legislatures. That was a video, a message from the future. In our Growth Circle on Wednesday, I'm excited to hear people's thoughts on that video and what it inspired you to think about. Please sign up for that noon and 7 if you haven't. For everyone else, please look forward to our intro circles in August. If you're interested in joining our circles, we'll have intro circles in the first week in August, first Wednesday. So please sign up for that and join us. You can find us on all social media. You can also find us on our website, beckysanonymous.com. And then also just want to shout out, this August will be our year anniversary. And so we have a couple of special events that we're going to be planning in the last couple of weeks of August. So please look out for that. And yeah, super excited to see you all in Growth Circle this month and at our special events next month, and to meet new faces in our intro circles. So again, thank you so much for your time tonight. Again, look out for Andres's rescheduled date. We'll keep you all clued in for that. And yeah. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful night, and thanks for your time being here with Becky's Anonymous. Have a good night.